Hello world, and welcome to this edition of Tech on Fire with Blaze. I'm Blaze Stewart. I'm an architect at Winelect, and today we're going to be talking about the OSI model and stepping through all the layers it contains. Today we're going to be talking about networking, and I'm not talking about social networking or LinkedIn networking. I'm talking about computer networking. If you're a developer, you're probably wondering, why do I even care about this stuff? That's what those network engineers do. They concern themselves with wires and switches and servers and all that physical hardware that they connect together and make run. All I really want to do is code, and I'm going to give my code to the ops guys, and they're going to figure out how to make it run on a network. Increasingly, though, as we go to the cloud, networking is becoming virtualized. Servers are becoming virtualized, and how these all connect together is all virtual. And that has a lot of implications for software developers. Everything nowadays in the virtual world is software defined. So we talk about software defined networking. So this is getting a little bit closer to home for coders and software developers and software architects. And increasingly, as we go more to the cloud, increasingly infrastructure is becoming infrastructure as code. And we stop thinking about infrastructure in terms of wires and switches and physical servers, and we start thinking about infrastructure in terms of actual scripts and actual configuration files and everything being defined as code. And this paradigm might be new to some people, but it's actually very critical if you're going to be actually doing anything at scale in the cloud. And we'll talk about this in later videos. But today we're going to do an introduction to basic network concepts so that you can understand what networking is and how it works, so you can actually deploy your applications in the cloud with success. The first concept I want to talk about this morning is the OSI model. The OSI model was originally proposed in 1983 to give some kind of taxonomy to organize the myriad of technologies that were coming out at that time. And these technologies were wide and varied in their standards, and the OSI model was introduced to give some way to organize these into various layers in the tech networking stack that we're going to look at here in a second. Layer 1 in the OSI model is the physical hardware that is used to build out a network. So this would be things like cables, NIC cards, some of the physical devices that are rack mounted to connect all those Ethernet cables to access points, and even the modem in your phone and the tower it connects to would all be a part of these physical components that go into building out a network. On top of these devices, though, are wire level protocols. This is the Datalink layer. These wire level protocols are things like Ethernet and Wi-Fi. Ethernet is used by NIC cards to talk to switches and other NIC cards, and Wi-Fi is used by wireless adapters to talk to access points. All of these protocols are within the kind of media that they're connecting to. So Wi-Fi is specific to wireless adapters. So you need some kind of way to abstract that, and that is where layer 3 comes in, the network layer. By far the most popular implementation of the network layer in the world is the Internet Protocol, or IP. On top of IP, you have other protocols that are responsible for running the actual transmission of data to make sure it reliably gets from point to point. And this is layer 4, the transport layer. And some implementations of this that are most common are TCP and UDP. TCP is probably the most popular one that is used by most common protocols, most standard protocols on the internet. And UDP allows for you to build custom protocols if you so choose. On top of these protocols, you have the session layer, and this is layer 5 in the model. And the session layer is responsible for connectivity and termination of the connection, and even sometimes authentication if you're using a VPN. And some popular implementations on the VPNs would be things like LTTP and point-to-point protocol, although that's not widely used anymore. On top of the session layer, you have the presentation layer, or layer 6, and this is responsible for encoding and encryption. So encoding in things like UTF-8 or ASCII, and the encryption might be things like TLS or SSL that are built on top of that. the session layer. Now, finally, you get to layer 7, which is the application layer. The application layer are the application layer protocols that we as developers are very familiar with. Things like HTTP or FTP or MQTT. All of these things are application specific, and they are really what we deal with mostly in the code that we write. In many cases, though, we might have to deal with things like TLS and SSL whenever we're building out networks, or we might have to deal with things like TCP connections and dealing with port level problems whenever we're diagnosing problems. So it's important that you're familiar with this model so that you can build out networks and understand where problems might occur in the model.
Well, this wraps up our video for today on the OSI model. Next time we'll be talking about layer 3 routing and IP addresses and how all this works to get your traffic across the internet. If you like this content, please consider visiting us online at www.wintelect.com, and there you can find about services that Wintelect offers, including training and consulting services. Also, please consider subscribing to this channel by clicking on the subscribe button and clicking the bell icon to get notifications when new content becomes available, and also comment down below. You can also follow me on Twitter at @TheOneMule, and also follow Wintelect on Twitter at WintelectNow or at Wintelect. We are constantly posting things about Azure-related technologies and things related to software development. You can also reach us by email at consulting@wintelect.com. Until next time, thank you.